With Sri Lanka posting an economic growth of 1.6% in the third quarter of this year, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Weerasinghe expressed hope of achieving 3% economic growth in the next year. Speaking to Indivari Amawatha during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on Derana 24, the central bank chief said that Sri Lanka is on track to record a current account surplus in 2023 after several years, and added that the usable reserves in the country will be around $3 billion by year end. Further, the central bank governor said that measures such as the 450 billion rupee allocation of state funds for bank recapitalization are in place to ensure the public's confidence in the country's banking system.
2023, I believe, was the toughest year in terms of putting the framework, in creating and putting the country in a right policy framework towards 2024 and beyond. Do you think you were successful in bringing the challenges together, analyzing them and really putting a framework in place, or is there more work to be done in 2024?
There's obviously some more work to be done. That we have to admit. This is not the end of the game. If you look at the IMF report that was published after the completion of the first review, it would certainly say out of the commitment that we have made with the creditors and with the IMF and with the globally, we have met almost 99% of commitments have already been delivered by the completion of the first review. Then we have certain other commitments going forward in 2024. Next part, important one, is to have an agreement in principle with commercial creditors. That's the next important step. And beyond that, there are certain commitments in terms of policies, implement certain reforms. All these things are next steps. But important one is that we have made a good progress. 2022 was the worst year in terms of economic performance. 2023, even Q1, 11.5% negative contraction, and continuously 6 quarters of economic contraction. Now, yesterday numbers prove that we are in the right path and we are coming out of the recession. And first time after 6 quarters, Q3 grew by 1.6%. So this is a positive sign. We are in the recovery path, and we need to move steadily and continuously in this path. And 2024 is an important year for us to come back out of the crisis.
With the anticipated quarter 4 performance, where do you expect Sri Lanka to end the year? And 2024, what are the target numbers?
In 2023, Q3 plus 0.6%. Q4 will be certainly much higher positive growth, that we have all early indicators say economy is recovering back to normal situation. And overall, whole year as a result of negative growth in the first half, so it could still be a negative, but close to negative 3%. But going forward to 2024, I'm sure for the whole year, I would expect at least about 3% growth.
What are the challenges you anticipate on the Sri Lankan economy?
There are certain headwinds, especially coming from the external sector. For example, now this year, global demand for export is much lower than what all expected. From Sri Lanka, all the other countries, exporting countries like China, India, export growth has been low. Plus, there are a lot of other concerns in terms of Israel-Gaza war. As a result, there would have been acceleration of oil prices to much higher levels. But luckily, that has now been subdued to a certain extent. Stabilizing, I don't think oil prices would be a bigger challenge going forward for the next year. From Sri Lanka side, positive part is there's tourism is obviously picking up much faster than what we thought even earlier. That will give some cushion or buffer for foreign exchange earnings, and also remittances. As we have seen, there's a significant growth. So some lowering export we can expect, export earnings, but there's a cushion in terms of trade-off. The support coming from remittance and tourism will certainly help for us to maintain what we call current account. This year, 2020, will be current account surplus for the first time for long years. Even next year, we are expecting the much kind of a lower or smaller current account deficit, which will help us to maintain some stability in terms of exchange rate, for us to be able to build up our reserves to a much more comfortable level. So, I mean, this year also is a significant improvement in terms of foreign exchange reserves that we are building up. As from almost zero levels, we have been almost like usable reserves well above 2 billion. It will be close to 3 billion by the end of the year with IMF money, World Bank aid money coming in.
Banking sector, does the central bank sort of like monitor the kind of risk potential, and how is the central bank proactively responding to this?
This is our direct responsibility, central bank, to maintain financial system stability, especially in deposit-taking institutions like banks and non-bank financial institutions. If you look at last year, banks, financial sector were in a very difficult situation. If you can remember that we had a lot of talk about the losing deposit of money, and the debt restructuring will have impact on deposits. That's why we have been very carefully managed that situation last year. It's our responsibility. responsibility to ensure banking sector remains stable so that all the money by the public deposits are safe and secure. So we have been able to do that. Even going forward, there will be still some stresses. For example, external debt restructuring. There are local banks, those are holding interest foreign bonds. There are certain foreign currency debt by petroleum corporation taken by the government that also will have to be restructured. So in addition to non-performing loans, there are other areas where some impact on the banking sector. That is why, if you can remember, the budget announced allocated 450 billion. If there's a need for recapitalization of the two state banks or the banks, government has already, in our request, based on our assessment, there's a buffer created through the budget, the public sector money, 450 billion, in case with the restructuring, if there's a support, there's a recapitalization coming needed for the banks. That will ensure going forward bank system stability, which is most important. I can give the assurance that this country, the difficult time is now over. Going forward, we'll have a stable financial system that will facilitate growth, that will provide credit for the businesses, that will secure deposit of the public. That's the important part.